Thanks, guys. As you can see, we've recreated my family set here. I'm not actually sure what this is behind it. It kind of scared me, though. I don't know what's under the tarp. We may reveal that at the end. But you've learned the most difficult thing we were going to do today, which is how to pronounce Scieszka. Because everyone looks at that. And unless you're Polish, you just freeze up. Because that word is actually, it's a Polish word, my last name. It's kind of close to the Polish word for path. Like, I would have been much easier in Poland as John Path. I'm a big hit over there. That was my grandparents who immigrated. But when I was in school, like, the teacher would get to my name, and they would usually say, like, Jon Scieszka, or Jon Scieszka. Or my favorite one would be, like, the nuns, because I went to a Catholic school. They would just say, John, and then just wait until I said, yes, here. But it's really easy if you don't look at it. So it rhymes with fresca and starts with SH. So everyone say Scieszka. Perfect. Okay, we're all done here. Thank you. We have a few more books to buy, and then, oh no, I think it's been advertised that I'm reading. So I thought I would show you some stuff, maybe tell you a little bit about how I became a writer, because that's a weird thing. And I know there's some writers here. Is anybody working on writing stories? Oh, nice. Anybody working on drawing, illustrating? People doing both? That's great, because you make twice as much money. So keep doing that. And then I'll leave time so you can ask questions. Because kids are always asking me questions. Well, adults too, but those are more embarrassing. No, actually, the kid ones are kind of embarrassing too. Because I usually get the classics of, like, how old are you? How much money do you make? What happened to your hair? Why are you so incredibly good looking? I get that all the time. It's really annoying. No. So I'm the guy who wrote The True Story of the Three Little Pigs. You might have seen that before. That was the very first book I published. And that was the story told by the wolf. Oh, you know what the other great question kids ask me a lot is, where do you get your ideas? And one place I got a lot of my ideas from is I grew up with 5 brothers and no sisters. And we all fit in 10 years. And this is usually when people say, your poor mother. Which was kind of crazy, because we just wrestled all the time. And my mom would always just say, like, stop wrestling. But we just couldn't stop. Like, we would wrestle for, like, who got to get in the front seat of the car. We would wrestle for who got the last piece of pizza. We would wrestle for who got to go through the door first. But my mom's one rule was, do not wrestle in the living room, because she had some stuff she thought might get broken. And we said, oh, don't worry about that. But one time I was walking through the living room, and my brother Jim jumped on my back. So I had to do something, right? So I just flipped him over my head, and he landed on the couch, which was good for Jim, because he didn't get hurt, but bad for the couch, because the front legs broke off the couch. It just went like, so Jim and I freaked out. We tried to put the legs back underneath it, and then we tried to, like, Elmer's glue them, but then it fell down. Then we tried putting books under there, but that didn't look good. So we just said, let's get out of here. Let's just run away from home. So we went to run away. And my brother Jim said, don't worry about it. I'll tell Mom what happened. I said, I'm getting out of here. So I ran out the door and ran right into my mom, who looked at her couch, and she said, what happened to my couch? Well, that wasn't exactly how she sounded like, but that's kind of my mom voice. And Jim said, oh, you know what happened? John did it. I went, no way, I didn't do it. Tom did it. And then my brother Tom said, no way, I didn't do it. Greg did it. And Greg said, Brian did it. Brian said, no, Jeff did it. And then Jeff was the littlest, so he didn't have anybody to blame. And he just looked around and went like, the dog did it. But I think that's honestly where I got the idea for this book. Years later, when I was writing stuff, I thought maybe the wolf didn't do it. Maybe it wasn't his fault. A couple houses fell down. He ate a few pigs. No big deal, right? Yeah, it could have happened that way. And then I loved it. So I went to school and studied a whole bunch of different stuff. None of it writing, although I always kind of loved reading and writing. And I loved fairy tales. And then when I wrote this book, nobody liked it. It got rejected a bunch of times. But I met this guy, Lane Smith, who's the illustrator. And he did these great illustrations like this, which really scared people even more, I think. Because if you look closely at this burger, there's things up here like a nice rat tail, bunny ears, or I don't even know what that yellow sauce is, but that's pretty scary. Hopefully it's mayonnaise, good call. Really old mayonnaise. And then after that book got published, which frighteningly enough now was 25 years ago, then I did The Frog Prince Continue, The Stinky Cheese Man. Oh, that one came, I can tell you where I got the idea for those stories, is my daughter's favorite story was The Gingerbread Man. Did anyone ever hear that story? Oh, nice. So the gingerbread man runs around and everyone likes to catch him so much, he smells so good. And my daughter made me read that story every night, like 500 times. And finally I got so sick of that story, I thought I had to change it. And then I changed it so he's made out of really bad smelling cheese. And nobody wants to chase him. Oh, and here's one of my favorite stories in here. This one's called The Really Ugly Duckling. Because once upon a time, there was a mother duck and a father duck who had 7 baby ducklings. 6 of them were those regular looking ducklings on the side, but the 7th was a really ugly duckling. And everyone used to say, what a nice looking bunch of ducklings. All except that one. Man, he's really ugly. Now, the really ugly duckling heard those people, but he didn't care because he knew that one day he would grow up to be a swan, and he would be bigger and look better than everybody in the pond. Well, as it turned out, he was just a really ugly duckling, and he grew up to be just a really ugly duck. The end. See, isn't that heartwarming? I can show you that in time lapse again. There he's little, big, little, big, little, big. I kind of love that the ducks on the side just stay exactly the same. He just gets a bigger piece of drool. But that's kind of the beauty of working with an illustrator. I was telling somebody here today, just like I get to just write the stories, then hand them off to my illustrator. So I wrote the story of the guy made of cheese, but I didn't know what he would look like. And then when Lane drew this, I kind of thought that's kind of perfect. Like that's how a guy would look made out of cheese, right? He's got olives for eyes, bacon for a mouth, and that's what he looks like, but he smells terrible. And then I did a bunch of Time Warp Trio books, which are kind of, when I was teaching, I taught 1st grade through 8th grade. And teaching my 2nd and 3rd graders, I was always looking for crazy books that were kind of really skinny. And that's the Time Warp. Oh, here's one over here I'll show you. The beauty of the Time Warp is when I was teaching 2nd grade, I would see a lot of my boys selecting books this way, going like, oh yeah, that looks good. You got to make sure it looks really skinny like that. And then when you open up the book, it should look like this. So if you have to read a whole chapter, you're not getting killed with all text. Look at that. You almost read that whole thing already. And then, boom, the chapter's done. So that's the literary idea behind the Time Warp. And also I could just send 3 guys anywhere in history because they get a magic book from their Uncle Joe. And being boys, they never read the directions, so they don't know how it works, which is kind of great. And they just go everywhere. They meet up with Blackbeard the pirate. They meet up with the Black Knight. They meet up with the Vikings. And these were kind of the most fun just for the titles, like Viking it and liking it. Your mother was a Neanderthal. Oh, Math Curse, which scared everybody. And no one bought any of those. Oh, yes, she did. There's a brave soul. Well, I wrote that because I love math and science. I taught math and science for a couple years, too, and scared my editor when I told her I wanted to make a math book. She said, oh, please don't. It'll scare everyone. But it's a little girl who wakes up and everything becomes a math problem. Oh, actually, let me show you some of this because this one's kind of fun. And I got to put all of my favorite math problems in here. So here she is in math class, and her teacher, Mrs. Fibonacci, says, you know, you can think of everything as a math problem. And sure enough, the next day, everything turns into a math problem. It's like how many outfits are in her closet. And of course, there's a liquid problem, right? Like pouring milk in the cereal. It's how many pints in a quart, how many quarts in a gallon, how many inches in a foot, how many feet in a yard, how many feet in your shoes. There's always a bus problem. This looks like a smart group. I bet you can do this one. So there's 5 kids already on the bus. 5 more kids get on at the next stop. 5 more kids get on at the last stop. So true or false, what is the bus driver's name? I love that 3rd graders just yell out like, 15! Like it just has to be. Lunch is pizza and apple pie, so you know what that means? Fractions. So each pizza is cut into 8 equal slices. Each pie is cut into 6 equal slices. If I want 2 slices of pizza, should I ask for A, 1/8, B, 2/8, or C, 2 slices of pizza? Good answer. English is a word problem. So if mail plus box equals mailbox, does lipstick minus stick equal lip? Yes. Yes. Does tuna fish plus tuna fish equal forna fish? Yeah, maybe. Oh, there's so many problems. There's always a cupcake problem in every one of these. The money problem is one of my favorites. So have you ever noticed that Abraham Lincoln is on both the $5 bill and the penny? And George Washington is on the $1 bill and the quarter. So which of these is true? A, does 1 Washington equal 25 Lincolns? Or B, do 5 Washingtons equal 1 Lincoln? Or does 1 Washington equal 100 Lincolns? Or does 1 Lincoln equal 20 Washingtons? Don't forget to show your work. And for extra credit, how do you think Thomas Jefferson feels about all this? Probably not very good, right? Well, I won't reveal how the girl solves her math problem, but she breaks her math curse, and everything's great until science class, when Mr. Newton says, you know, you can think of everything as a science experiment. The end. That's the end of math curse. So don't be afraid of math curse. That can solve everything. And after math curse, so many kids wrote and asked, like, where's the science book? That I actually did end up doing science verse. But changing everything into science poems. Like Glory, Glory, Evolution. Darwin found us a solution. Your mama is that shape and your knuckles always scrape. 'Cause Grandpa was an ape. All right, enough of that. Cowboy and Octopus was another book you might know. I know there's some Trucktown fans here. Smash Crash. And Truckery Rhymes. These were specifically written for kindergartners and first graders. So all the characters are like kindergartners and first graders. They're just trucks. They're also like my brothers and I. They just smash around and smash each other. And another favorite, Spooky Tire, just like you said you read. So in classic Scieszka fashion, too, I also just steal other stories and change them a little bit. So you may recognize this as the Golden Arm, but most people think Scieszka invented it. Well, here's where I get all of my ideas, I think, both stealing from fairy tales and things, and also from growing up with all my brothers. So this is my memoir, Knucklehead, because that's what my dad used to call us, like all 6 of us. I think he would actually forget what our names were. Like when we were running around, he would say, Jim, Tom, you, whoever you are, Knucklehead, stop right there. Or his other classic was to say, like, who's the knucklehead who left their bicycle right behind the car? And now it's flat. That was Tom. Or who was the knucklehead who was hitting the tennis ball against the aluminum siding? And now it looks like Swiss cheese. That was Greg. Or my favorite one, he said, was, who was the knucklehead who put the army man in the toaster? That was Jim. Because he had one of those little green army men with a gun, and he wanted to aim his gun differently, so he thought if he warmed it up a little bit, if he put it in the toaster, that'd be good. But it just melted and went to the bottom. And then our toast always tasted like Army Man for like the next 12 years. And so I illustrated this book all with pictures from my scrapbook and from my brother's scrapbooks. And here's all of us with our school photos. I think that's mom and dad up top. I think pre-children, because they're looking pretty happy and thin. And then there's Jim and John. And you can actually see the sliding scale, I think, of parental energy. So Jim and I have full suits with little monogram pocket handkerchiefs. Tom's got a coat, but it's not his. Greg's got a sweater. I don't know what that is Brian's wearing. Jeff's got nothing. He doesn't even have a haircut. So that's even how it happened with the, because I asked all my brothers, I said, well, send me all the pictures you have from your scrapbook. So Jim and I have scrapbooks with everything in it. We have that little bracelet from when you were a baby. We have the footprints. We have handprints. We have gum we were chewing in 3rd grade. It's like, I don't know why, but my mom saved everything. Tom and Greg, number 3 and 4, like they have scrapbooks, but stuff was just kind of thrown in there. And then Brian is kind of sad. He's got a big bag with some stuff in it. But the saddest, I think, is Jeff. He had a little sandwich bag, and there's only 4 pictures in it. Yeah. And actually, 2 of them aren't even of him. So here's one of the pictures Jeff got. Isn't that sweet? Except he was the 6th brother. And he can count. He's not stupid. He was little, but he wasn't stupid. So he said, Mom, where am I? There's like 5. There's everybody else. And she said, no, see, I'm in the back in the kitchen. I'm holding you. So that was sort of true, but not really. So this is our family. Like we were just this, this is us playing combat. That's Fred Wright, our next door neighbor, about to stab Jim in the head. With his poncho. I think that's me aiming my submachine gun right at you. And then there's other great stories in here. Like this one called Sorry, Greg. Because you know what that is? It's an x-ray of a broken collarbone. Yeah, you know this little bone, like right in the front of your shoulder? You can actually feel this little bone. Did you know that only takes like 7 pounds of pressure to break? Like we didn't know that. Until one day, Jim and I were going to go out and play, and we're the oldest brothers, and my mom said, why don't you let Greg come with you? He'd like to play with you. And we said, nah, Greg's kind of scrawny, and he's big and weird, and we don't want him playing with us. And my mom said, no, Greg really loves you. Why don't you let Greg play with you? And we said, nah, we don't like Greg. And my mom, then she said, well, you know what? In her motherly style, she said, let me just say, let Greg play with you. So we let Greg play with us. And we played a lot of games. Like we played football, basketball, baseball, hockey. We also played games we invented, like slaughter ball. So in slaughter ball, that was some good looks by some people. So in slaughter ball, you get a whole bunch of people, 1 football, you throw the football up in the air, and then whoever catches it gets slaughtered. That means everyone tries to jump on them and smash them and tackle them. And then the one person who has the ball has to run around and try not to get smashed. So one time we were playing slaughter ball with Greg, and we heard something go, and it must have been something more than 7 pounds that landed on Greg, because he got up and he was going like, ow. And his one arm didn't work so good. So we took him back to my mom, who luckily was a nurse. Yeah, I wasn't pointing too weirdly, but he was kind of like dragging it like that. So we showed it to my mom, and she said, oh. And we said, sorry, Mom, I think we broke Greg. And she said, yeah, you broke his collarbone. So when you break that little bone, like you can't really put it in a cast, like your arm cast or a leg cast. It's kind of hard. What they do is they wrap you up. So you almost look like you're wearing football shoulder pads. So we ended up breaking Greg's collarbone, I think like 4 times. Because he kept playing with us. Not on purpose. And then he broke it once himself. So almost every picture we have of Greg, he looks like this. Like those aren't his shoulders, really. He's just, those are his real ears. I don't know what happened to his ears. We didn't do that. But we did do the collarbone. But it was great because we could like take Greg in the basement and shoot hockey pucks at him. And he would just like bounce it off like this. It was pretty good. Greg's kind of an angry man today. I don't know why.
I don't know why.
Yeah, I don't know why either. But this was bad for other people too. It wasn't just bad for Greg. Because here's how it worked in our house. This is me in 2nd grade with my brand new suit coat for picture day, looking very sharp. And then next year, I gave the coat to Tom for picture day. He's looking even better. He rocked it with that nice tie and pocket handkerchief. Then it was supposed to go to Greg, but as you remember, Greg was looking like this. So we gave the coat to our neighbor, Bobby Duchamp. He lived down the street, and he used the coat for picture day, but then he lost it. So the next year, Jeff didn't have the coat to wear, and he had to wear this coat. Sorry, Jeff. That's what happens when you're number 6 also. Your pants are always too long, too short, or you get this kind of stuff. Oh, there are just a million. I didn't even have to think stuff up. I just wrote the stories that happened. Because with 6 boys, you kind of did a lot of weird things. Like we always lived together like the 2 brothers closest in age. So Jim and I were roommates, then Tom and Greg, then Brian and Jeff. And Jim and I lived in the basement for a while, and we had a space heater. So one winter we decided it'd be great if we put out the heater like we did sometimes when we made fires out at the lake. So we just peed on it, which wasn't a good idea. Like 2 seconds after we did it, it smelled terrible. And then this picture is for a story that's called Crossing Swords. And if you have a lot of boys in your life, you probably know that it's not actually about swords. It's more about going to the bathroom together. Because we could, because we were boys, and it was easier and faster. But one time we figured out, it's like sword fighting. So we started sword fighting. And Greg yelled out like, Mom, Jim and John peed on me. And then my mom, who was a nurse, and she always insisted on correct terminology, so she yelled back, no, they urinated on you. And then I said, no, we didn't pee on him. And my mom said, no, you didn't urinate on him. So that's a story that years later, I actually got to tell to President Bush at the time, which kind of worked out really good. Let me fast forward to that. So then I taught for a while, had a bunch of these books out, and there I got my medal as the national ambassador. So it was this big event at the White House, and they asked you to read one of your stories. So I decided Crossing Swords was kind of perfect. And I also gave him a copy of the book, Knucklehead, and signed it to him, which was great. And there was a picture of him holding the book, and you could read Knucklehead. But I never got a hold of that picture. Well, but I was named the ambassador of all children's books, which means it was just kind of a thing made up by the Library of Congress. So I got to make it mean whatever I wanted. So I just dressed every day like this. And then I got a new car like this. Yeah, Lamborghini. Good call. So actually, when I go do school visits, kids always ask, like, you know, is this a real job? And they want to know, oh, what kind of car do you have, too? Which is that same question, like, is this thing worth doing to be an author? And I used to tell them, like, oh, no, I live in New York. I don't really have to have a car. And then you could just see kids going like, yeah, you suck. So I got this picture, and every school event I just show them, like, this is my car. And every month I get like a new Lamborghini. This is my latest one, the orange one. I'm getting a Murcielago next week, I think. I'm going to go shop around. Oh, and here's a book I wanted to show you. Birthday Bunny, which got turned into Battle Bunny. So I was on book tour for a while with this guy named Mac Barnett, who does some really great picture books you might know. Billy Twitter's and a Blue Whale Problem, Guess Again. So he and I found this book that we knew a friend of ours really hated. So we bought it for him and we were going to give it to him. It's a book about a little cat who's in a library. And the illustrations are kind of weird, so we changed them so the cat was like a zombie cat. And then we started drawing in the book and had little lasers coming out of his eyes, and then the cat's eating the babies. We just changed it a little bit. So we thought, oh man, we should do that as a book. But then we realized we couldn't mess up anyone else's book. So what we did is we thought we can make our own book that's really bad and then mess it up. So that's what we did. We wrote an entire terrible story called Birthday Bunny. And the way we did it is we just like kind of turned off our brain as much as we could and thought, like, what is the stupidest kid story you hear a million times? Oh, I know what. It's a little bunny who wakes up. It's his birthday. Nobody remembers it's his birthday. And then at the end of the forest, they have, guess what? A surprise party, yeah, which is the least surprising thing. Then we thought, oh yeah, we could turn that into something else. So we found an illustrator to do one whole book that looks all like this. It's all the Birthday Bunny story. And then we messed it up to become Battle Bunny. So it's what we did as kids. It's like every history book I ever had some additions to it. George Washington didn't look quite the same. And Birthday Bunny becomes Battle Bunny. And I love, like, so the illustrator did these great touches in the background, like where it says, it's your birthday on the banner, becomes, it's doomsday. And the idea was, like, kids are such great storytellers and artists themselves. And sometimes we as parents don't realize that. And that's exactly what happens here. So it's Alex's sweet grandmother decides this would be a perfect book for a 10-year-old Alex. And this is really not a good book for a 10-year-old. Like, Alex is a smart guy, and he's a good illustrator. So when he gets this book, his grandmother writes up in the corner, "Happy birthday, Alexander, to my favorite birthday bunny on his special day. Love, Gran." So Alex figures, she wrote in it, I should write in it too. So Birthday Bunny becomes Battle Bunny. And I love, like, he adds the bunny with his little eye patch and his scar in his ear. And it starts out sweetly enough, like, Bunny woke up from a night of pleasant dreams. Today is a very special day, he thought. Today is my birthday. Today I am not just a bunny, I'm a birthday bunny, which gets changed into I'm a battle bunny. Now, the one challenge with this book is it's impossible for one person to read it out loud. But working with a bunch of second graders, a brilliant second grader told me, oh, here's how you do it. You just have two people read it. So the librarian and I read it together, and it was so much fun because the librarian read the original birthday version, and at the same time, like a duet, I read the battle version. And then you hear it almost like you see it. You see both words at once. So here's Bunny, like, instead of hopping through the forest, he's chopping through the forest. And he chops everything down. And instead of his favorite breakfast being a bowl of Carrot Krispies, it's a bowl of greasy guts. And then it's just mayhem. And the president is driving by in his plane, and Alex says, "Mr. President, Battle Bunny's up to something no good. You need my help." But he meets up with the raven, the badger, the squirrel. He's looking very Obama-ish here. And Alex is still telling him, "You need my help." But Bunny decides to build a giant rocket. I don't want to spoil everything, so I won't show you all of it. But there is a battle royale. And it's amazing how much dancing kind of looks like fighting. So this was the big surprise party at the end, which becomes a huge battle at the end. And Alex is victorious. He says, I win. And the president is flying off in his Air Force One plane. He goes, thanks, Alex. Except there he is on the end papers. Well, let me take a break here and let you guys ask some questions. Do you guys have any questions about writing or illustrating or how to put out a heater? How to blow up a model airplane? Yes?
How do you that your illustrator,
Yeah.
how is he so good at drawing?
Oh, that's a great question. How is my illustrator so good at drawing? All of the illustrators I've had went to illustration schools in college and just practiced drawing. It's really about practicing. Because they say, like, everyone kind of starts off drawing, and then some people just stop. So they were those guys who kept drawing. Oh, yes. Oh, how do you get the ideas? That is the toughest question ever. But I think I get a lot of ideas from reading other books. Like, I love reading fairy tales and history books and science books, or also from watching weird cartoons. Like, I grew up watching Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Oh, yeah.
And they had crazy fairy tales. And reading Mad Magazine. I think that's what turned me into, Stinky Cheese Guy. Ooh, that's a great question. I love that. Yeah, adults, you can ask too. It's okay. Yes?
Excuse me. So do you have books that you're working on now, or do you have goals for working on things? Or at this point, is it whatever, when something pops in your intrigues you?
I chase all kinds of stuff, which is fun. And I usually have a couple things I'm working on together. And the latest thing is a series of science books I'll show you. Yes? Do I have a lot of books? Yes. I have a whole mess of books at my house. Do you have a lot of books at your house too?
Yeah.
Perfect, because I think that's how I started to be a writer, is first I was a reader. So my mom and dad would read to me The Carrot Seed and this book called Green Eggs and Ham. Or my other favorite book was Go Dog Go. Have you ever seen that book? It's just a bunch of different colored dogs driving around in cars. And then they have a party up in a tree. Which made perfect sense to me as a first grader. I thought, yeah, I love that. Though when I was in school, I was learning to read by reading Dick and Jane. Those things were terrible. I really just almost didn't become a reader because I was reading those going well, what is this? Oh, look at Spot. Spot is in the bushes. Ha, ha, ha. Just wow, that took a lot of work, and I didn't get anything out of it. Yes?
What's your favorite author?
Oh, what's my favorite author? I've got a bunch of them. I like different authors for different things. I really like a lot of different funny authors. And in the kids' book world, I love Mo Willems, who did Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. So he used to live near me in Brooklyn, and I got to hang out with him. He's pretty funny. The guy who did the illustrations for The Day the Crayons Quit is a very funny guy. I like Owen Colfer, who did Artemis Fowl. I think I'm sick of post-apocalyptic fiction. I can't read any more of that ever again. Do you have a favorite author that you like right now, besides Jon Scieszka? Yes?
Do you have any superstitions as a writer, write on a certain day?
Oh. Do I have any superstitions as a writer? No, but that's interesting. A lot of writers are very particular, they have to have a certain kind of pen or a kind of paper. No, I think from being a teacher, any time I have 5 minutes, I use it, without any superstition. And I don't get up early in the morning. It's kind of nice that, that's part of the great part about being a writer. You don't even have to put your pants on. I know it's scandalous, but you can just hang out at your house and then write when you can. But then the other hard thing about being a writer is you have to be your own boss. And you actually have to make yourself do the job, which is really kind of terrible. So when kids ask me, is writing fun? Now I just tell them no. It's bad. It's really grueling and very antisocial. When you think about it, you just got to sit at your desk and be in your own weird little world. My wife always says, you get weird when you're writing. So I'm sorry. That's what you have to do if you're a writer, kind of. Yeah?
I was going to ask, where did you and your brothers grow up, as well as when you were teaching?
Oh, yeah, I guess I didn't tell you that. So my brothers and I all grew up in Flint, Michigan, not too far away. I went to Albion College, right down I-94. And I studied a bunch of stuff. I was actually pre-med for a while because my mom was a nurse, and she told me I should be a doctor because I could make a lot of money and not work hard. Which I thought, that sounds great. But I didn't think, like, that's a nurse's take on the doctor world, I think. But I loved the science and the math, but always loved the writing, too. So I applied to writing programs and moved out to New York, where I live now. So I live in New York City, in Brooklyn, when I've been out there for like 40 years.
Is that where you were teaching?
And I was teaching in New York, yep. I was out there, I got a master's in fiction writing at Columbia, which then let me become a house painter in New York with my fine degree. And that's what I did. But then heard about teaching and just kind of stumbled into teaching with no teaching degree. So I taught at private schools for 10 years. One private school in New York, which was great. Because then I found my audience. I realized, like, I shouldn't be writing for adults. I should write for my crazy second and third graders. Yeah?
Do you get to meet second and third graders from other countries, too?
Yeah, I have gone to other countries and read stuff, which is really fascinating, like what translates. I went to Scotland and read a bunch of Stinky cheese stories, and nobody was laughing, which was really disturbing. But then I realized, like, the teachers had told them, like, they gave me the introduction saying, like, here's Jon Scieszka from all the way across the ocean. Please be very respectful. And they were being very respectful, and nobody was laughing until I finally got to, like, the fox saying, what's that funky smell? And some little kid just couldn't help it. And then a teacher started laughing, then it was okay. But I was just telling someone earlier, too, like, Battle Bunny just got translated into Chinese, which I have no idea how that works. Yeah?
Do the people around the world, do they like understand the books or are just like, yeah?
No, you know, because I think, she wondered if people around the world understand the books. Yeah, because I think the fairy tales cover a lot of area. A lot of people know, like, the Three Little Pigs and Cinderella. That's been told in a lot of different languages, which is kind of cool. But then you think something like Bunny, I don't know if they'll understand that.
Yeah.
They'll think this guy just wrecked a book.
Maybe just America is ready for it.
Yeah, maybe just America's ready for it. Good call. I don't know if even America's ready for it. We also heard from some teachers who said, like, they're getting notes back from parents saying, like, oh, I'm so sorry, someone drew in this book. And I had someone, like a custodian, threw the book out and told the librarian later, saying, oh, this book was just so messed up. We couldn't save it. I'm so sorry. That was part of my marketing plan, to sell more. Yeah.
Did any of your brothers or any of your second or third graders not love reading right away or maybe come to it later?
Oh, yeah. She wondered, like, if some of my brothers or second graders didn't love reading. Yeah, my own kids. I mean, I have both. My daughter, Casey, is a crazy overachiever reader. She loved reading, like, Babysitter's Club. She read when she couldn't read. She would turn books and make noises. Jake, he's a hockey player. Like, he'd take one look at the whole reading thing and he goes, this isn't for me. In fact, he had to read Little House on the Prairie with me, and I think it killed him. It was third grade required reading. And we got to that chapter where Laura and Pa make a door. Like, the whole chapter. And Jake turned to me and he said, like, is this going to be the whole chapter? Yeah, I think so. And a bunch of my second graders, too. You know, actually, that's a good segue to these other books I wanted to show you a little bit about. The Guys Read books that I started doing. So from this problem, when I was teaching, I found a lot of boys in particular were not readers. Because I think part of it is like they don't have a role model in school. 80% of the teachers in elementary school are women. 95% are the librarians. And even at home, I don't think boys often enough see dads in literate activities. So I started Guys Read just to find stuff guys like to read. The idea being, like, half of reading is just that motivation to want to be a reader. Like Dick and Jane wasn't going to do it for me, where Go Dog Go did. And if I hadn't found Go Dog Go, I might have chosen to then not be a reader. So these books are collections. I just asked like all my favorite writers to do a short story. So in the funny one, it's just 10 original funny stories by people like Jack Gantos, Jeff Kinney, who did Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Adam Rex, Mac Barnett, Owen Colfer, Kate DiCamillo, who's really funny. She was great to work with. Then we had a bunch of thriller stories from guys like M.T. Anderson, Jared Krasaska, Anthony Horowitz, all sports stories. And then the latest one was all fantasy and science fiction from guys like Tom Engelberger, who did Origami Yoda, Shannon Hale, Neil Schusterman, and Greg Ruth. So then it's a whole set where you can tell kids, like, you know, you don't have to like to read everything, so try this story. And if you don't like it, try another one. Because I didn't get that in school. Maybe that was going to Catholic school also. It's just like, yeah, finish that, or go to hell. Maybe that'll be the new message for guys read. Read or go to hell. No, maybe not. Can we edit that out later? No, probably not. So I went and studied science and math all the time when I was in college and kind of didn't use it. I think I really disappointed my mom who wanted, and my older brother Jim became a lawyer. I was supposed to be the doctor, but I didn't. I went off the rails and became a writer. But I figured out, like, what if there was a little guy who was a genius who knew everything about science and math? I could make a whole series about him. So this is a thing that's coming out next fall, or this coming fall. It's called Frank Einstein. So he's a 10-year-old genius. And in his laboratory workshop, these two robots self-assemble themselves, so then they can make anything. It's kind of a great writerly cheat, because now I can just invent anything. So in this book, they actually make antimatter overnight for like $30. So way cheaper than that whole Hadron Collider. It's much easier. And I got to use all of my math and science. I think my mom will be so proud of me. So these robots make themselves, and they surprise Frank. And here's the smarter robot, Clink. He's made from all the good parts. But then there's not many good parts left, so Clank makes himself. And he's got the brain of a Casio watch. And not much memory either. So he always forgets stuff, and he tells knock-knock jokes, which I kind of love. My editor read the first knock-knock jokes, and he goes, I don't think we should put this in here. Like, they're really stupid. I went, that's kind of what knock-knock jokes are. Sorry. So here's my favorite. And this is in like chapter 5, when Clink and Clank first just appear. So Clank, this big robot, pushes a little button on his side, and he says, knock, knock. And then the little robot Clink says, oh, for goodness sake, please don't start that again. I knew I should have erased your memory before I installed it. Knock, knock, says Clank. I know you're just going to say something odd, and then I'm going to have to add who to it, and then you're going to find amusement that I have said something that I did not intend to say. Why would you do that? Knock, knock. I'm not going to answer you, says Clink. Knock, knock. Oh, fine. Who is there? Boo. Boo who? You don't have to cry about it. It's just a joke. Ha, ha, ha. 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 I wanted him to fill like a whole page with ha-has, and the editor wouldn't let me. So I got that many in. Ding, says Clink. In 100 yards, turn left. Ha, ha, ha. Ha, 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 ha. Oh, you messed up my GPS. Ha, ha, ha. Ha, 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 says Clank. Clink whacks his own head with his vacuum hose arm. Frank Einstein thinks, this is going to be amazing and very weird. So that's going to be a whole series called Frank Einstein. So I plan to cover all of science in 6 books, which was maybe a bit much. Now that I'm working on book 2, trying to actually explain electricity. When you think about it, it's a terrible, unbelievably complicated subject, / dangerous. But it's full of great diagrams. So in all the books, they're full of both diagrams and illustrations, which is kind of fun way, I think, like Time Warp brought history to kids. This brings science. So to even use the words Hadron Collider in a book is kind of fun. Even if most 3rd graders will look at me like, what, are you crazy? So there's Frank Einstein. Well, thank you so much, you guys. You probably learned way too much about Jon Scieszka.
And there's something I made for you.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Would you sign this for me?
Yeah.
Here.
Should I do your name?
Wow, yeah, you can. That's better than I can do it, actually.
Now what?
Oh, now what? John S. That's good. Put a little period after. Oh, I'll tell you. C is the next one.
C.
Yep. I. E. To Edison, my new favorite writer and illustrator.
You want to go take a picture, babe?
I'm okay.
Okay, you look at me, babe.